The EU just eliminated its most dangerous opponent. Not on the battlefield, not in an election, in a courtroom. On March 31st, 2025, a Paris court handed down the verdict that Brussels had been waiting for: Marine Le Pen. The woman who was leading every single poll for the 2027 French presidential election was convicted, sentenced, and banned from running for office. Effective immediately. No waiting for appeal, no grace period. Gone. 37% in the polls. 10 points ahead of every other candidate. The undisputed frontrunner. And in a single afternoon, she was erased from the race. And the moment that verdict landed, one man in Europe did not stay silent. Viktor Orbán went straight to X and posted 2 words: Je suis Marine. I'm Marine. Brussels had just made the biggest political mistake of its existence. And Orbán knew it before the ink was dry. This is not a courtroom story. This is not a legal story. This is the story of how the European establishment eliminated a democratic frontrunner, and how that decision may have just broken the EU's credibility forever. Let's go through exactly what happened, because the mainstream media is giving you the verdict. They are not giving you the picture. It starts with the numbers. Because without the numbers, you cannot understand why this verdict shook all of Europe. One poll, conducted on March 26th, 5 days before the verdict, Marine Le Pen was sitting at 37% for the first round of the 2027 presidential election. That is not just a lead. That is a landslide in waiting. In 2022, she got 23% in the first round. 5 years later, she had nearly doubled that number. The gap between her and the next candidate was 10 full points. She was not just the frontrunner. She was the inevitable winner. And then the court stepped in. The charge was embezzlement of EU funds. Between 2004 and 2016, Le Pen and members of her National Rally Party were accused of using European Parliament money, funds meant for parliamentary assistance in Brussels, to instead pay party staff back in France. The total amount in question was approximately $4 million. A serious charge. A real case. Nobody is disputing that a trial needed to happen. But here is where it gets complicated. And here is where the numbers stop adding up. The sentence. 4 years in prison. 2 suspended, 2 served as house arrest with an electronic ankle tag. A €100,000 fine. The party itself fined €2 million. All of that. Severe but not unprecedented for a financial crime of this scale. And then the 5th year. The ban. 5 full years of ineligibility to hold public office. Effective immediately. Not when the appeal concludes. Not when the case is settled. Right now. Today. Before she has exhausted a single legal avenue. That is the number that ends her 2027 campaign. That is the number that removes the frontrunner from the race. And that is the number that Orbán and millions of Europeans immediately identified as the point where law ended and politics began. Now listen very carefully to what the judge said when she explained the immediate enforcement. She said the court had weighed 2 risks. The risk of electing a convicted person to office. And this is a direct quote. The major risk to public order if a likely presidential candidate was banned from running. Read that again. The judge acknowledged that banning Le Pen created a major risk to public order. She saw it, she named it, and she banned her anyway. That is not standard legal reasoning. That is a court making a political calculation and writing it into the verdict. And when you write the political consequence into the legal reasoning itself, you have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. And now here is the detail that mainstream media buried completely. The same court, the same chamber, the same judges. 1 year earlier, in February 2024, they ruled on a nearly identical case. François Bayrou, centrist politician, close ally of President Macron, charged with the same category of offense, acquitted. His fellow party members received only suspended sentences, no immediate ban, no ineligibility, no removal from any election, same court, same law, same category of offense. Opposite outcome. Marine Le Pen, polling at 37% opposition candidate, immediate 5-year ban. François Bayrou, Macron ally, acquitted. One of these people is currently the Prime Minister of France. And it is not Marine Le Pen. This is the detail that changes everything. Because you cannot look at these 2 outcomes side by side and call it justice. You can call it many things, but not justice. And Orbán saw it immediately. Je suis Marine. 2 words. Posted the moment the verdict landed. And behind those 2 words is an entire argument that Brussels cannot answer. What Orbán is saying is this. This is what they do. When they cannot beat you at the ballot box, they go to the courts. When the polls show you winning, they find the charges. When the people want you, the establishment removes you. It happened in Romania with Colin Georgescu. It happened with Donald Trump. And now it is happening in France with Marine Le Pen. That is the pattern Orbán is drawing. And the facts fit the pattern uncomfortably well. Romania. Presidential election. A surprise first-round winner emerges from nowhere with a massive surge of popular support. The Constitutional Court annuls the election entirely. No new vote yet. No clear answer. The frontrunner simply gone. Donald Trump. Indicted across 4 separate jurisdictions while leading every national poll. Convicted in New York. Sentenced. The legal process running parallel to the campaign calendar with precision that no coincidence can fully explain. Marine Le Pen, polling at 37%. 10 points clear. 5 days before the verdict, the poll comes out showing her dominance. 5 days later, banned. These cases are different in their details. The charges are real. The courts are independent. Nobody is claiming a conspiracy with evidence. But Orbán is not claiming a conspiracy. He is pointing to a pattern. And a pattern does not require a conspiracy to be real. It only requires the same result to keep happening to the same kind of people. Now let's talk about the reaction. Because the reaction tells you everything about where Europe actually is right now. Viktor Orbán. Je suis marine. Immediate. Defiant. Italy's Matteo Salvini called the ruling a declaration of war by Brussels and warned there would be repercussions for the EU. The Netherlands' Geert Wilders condemned the verdict within hours. Donald Trump, standing in the Oval Office, said, and this is almost verbatim, she was banned from running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. The Kremlin. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov said more and more European capitals are trampling over democratic norms. Now stop. Because that last one matters. When the Kremlin's talking points and Hungary's prime minister are using the same sentence, something has gone wrong in the European narrative. Not because Orbán is wrong, but because Orbán's argument is now so obvious that even Moscow can recite it without adding anything new. That is a catastrophic communications failure for Brussels. And it happened because the verdict handed Orbán exactly the argument he has been making for years, wrapped in a Paris courtroom bow. Meanwhile, the EU establishment said almost nothing. A few muted statements about judicial independence. A reminder that the courts operate independently of the Commission. A careful silence from von der Leyen, from Macron. Barely a word. Because what can they say? If they celebrate the verdict, they confirm the political motivation. If they condemn it, they undermine the judiciary they spent years claiming Orbán was destroying. There is no good position. So they chose silence. And silence in this moment looks exactly like what Orbán said it was. And now, the math. Because this is a channel that always follows the money. And the money in this story is the most revealing part of all. The total amount at the center of this case. $4 million. Embezzled over 12 years. Serious. Wrong. Prosecutable. Nobody disputes that. Now compare. The European Parliament hands out approximately 2.4 billion euros per year in staff allowances across all MEPs. Le Pen's share of the alleged scheme over 12 years was $4 million. That is less than 0.02% of a single year's budget. Courts have handed out suspended sentences for far larger financial crimes in far shorter timeframes. And they did exactly that for François Bayrou. The math does not explain the sentence. The math does not explain the immediate enforcement. The math does not explain why this particular case produced the maximum possible political consequence. The removal of the leading candidate from the next presidential race. When nearly identical cases produced no political consequence at all. The only number that explains the sentence is 37%. That is the number the court was really ruling on. Whether they intended to or not. And Orbán knows it. And now all of Europe knows it. Here is where it lands for Brussels. And for the EU project as a whole. The EU has spent years, positioning itself as the guardian of European democracy. Against Hungary. Against Poland. Against anyone who deviated from the Brussels line. The entire moral architecture of the EU's authority rests on one claim. We protect democracy. We protect the rule of law. We protect the right of citizens to choose their leaders. That claim is now in serious trouble. Because you cannot say you protect democracy and then watch in silence as the frontrunner of a founding member state's presidential election is removed from the race 5 days after a poll shows her at 37%. You cannot lecture Hungary about judicial independence and then offer no comment when your own court applies the same standard differently to different political sides. The double standard is not subtle. It is visible. It is documented. It is sitting in 2 court decisions from the same chamber in the same building in Paris. And Orbán, who has absorbed years of EU lectures about democracy and rule of law, is now standing in front of all of Europe and saying, look at what they do when the polls go the wrong way. Look at what democracy means to them when the people make the wrong choice. He does not need to say anything else. The verdict said it for him. And now the question that nobody in mainstream media is asking. What happens next? The appeal is scheduled. Hearings set for January through February 2026. A verdict expected before the summer of 2026. If the conviction is overturned, Le Pen could potentially still run in 2027. The window is tight. The outcome is uncertain. But here is the thing. Even if she wins the appeal, even if she runs, even if she wins in 2027, The damage to the EU's credibility is already done, because the image of the frontrunner being led out of a courtroom banned from running, that image does not disappear when the appeal court rules. It lives in the minds of every European voter who watched it happen. It feeds every argument Orbán has been making. It validates every narrative that the establishment removes people the people choose. The EU did not just remove Marine Le Pen from the 2027 race. It handed Viktor Orbán the strongest argument he has ever had. For free. Gift wrapped in a Paris courthouse. And Orbán is going to use it. Every week. Every video. Every press conference between now and 2027. Je suis Marine. And behind those words, a blueprint. A warning. And a verdict that Brussels cannot take back. Viktor Orbán did not fire a single shot in this battle. He watched the EU eliminate its own opposition. And then he told the entire world exactly what he saw. That is the story. And only one channel is connecting all of it for you. Subscribe. Hit the like button. Because the next target is already being chosen. And when it happens, you will see it here first.